Sunday morning sunshine filters through the manicured trees of Westfield Heights, casting gentle shadows across pristine driveways and perfectly maintained lawns. The affluent neighborhood hums with the quiet satisfaction of success, where every house tells a story of achievement and every car whispers of prosperity. Kia Williams kneels beside her vintage bicycle in the driveway of her elegant two-story home, her hands already stained with chain grease despite the early hour. She wears simple work clothes, faded jeans and a plain t-shirt that have seen better days, as she methodically adjusts the derailleur with practiced precision. The rhythmic clicking of gears and the soft whir of spinning wheels echo in the peaceful morning air. A gleaming BMW X7 glides into the driveway across the street, its pristine surface reflecting the morning light like a mirror. Catherine Thornfield emerges first, her designer heels clicking against the concrete with sharp authority. Her Chanel suit fits like armor, and the Hermes bag dangling from her arm costs more than most people's monthly salary. Every detail of her appearance screams wealth and status. Brad Thornfield follows, adjusting his Armani tie with the casual confidence of a man accustomed to commanding respect. His eyes sweep across the neighborhood with proprietary satisfaction until they land on Kia's humble figure hunched over her bicycle. The contrast couldn't be more stark. The impeccably dressed white couple versus the black woman in work clothes, tinkering with machinery like some common mechanic. Catherine's lips purse in disapproval as she whispers to her husband, her voice carrying just enough for Kia to hear. What on earth does she think she's doing? Catherine strides across the street with the purposeful gait of someone accustomed to having her opinions heard and respected. Her heels tap out a staccato rhythm on the asphalt, each step radiating authority and barely contained indignation. "Excuse me," she calls out, her voice carrying the crisp enunciation of private school education and country club membership. "What exactly are you doing here?" Kia looks up from her work, wiping her hands on a rag as she takes in the approaching figure. A slight furrow appears between her eyebrows. Not fear, but the wariness of someone who has learned to recognize trouble when it comes dressed in designer clothing. "I'm working on my bicycle," Kia responds evenly, her voice calm and measured. "Is there a problem?" Catherine's laugh has all the warmth of winter wind. "A problem? This is Westfield Heights, not some backyard repair shop. You can't just do this sort of thing here." She gestures at the bicycle tools scattered across the driveway, as if they were evidence of some heinous crime. Brad materializes beside his wife, his presence adding weight to her words. "My wife is absolutely right," he says, his lawyer's voice carrying the subtle threat of legal consequence. "There are regulations about this sort of activity in residential areas." Kia stands slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. At full height, she meets their gazes without flinching. "I'm working on my own property. There's no law against maintaining my personal bicycle in my own driveway." "Your property?" Catherine's eyebrows arch in skeptical surprise. The question hangs in the air like an accusation, heavy with implications about who belongs in neighborhoods like this and who doesn't. "Are you renting a room here?" Brad asks, his tone suggesting he's already calculated the most likely scenario in his mind. "Because if you're operating some kind of business?" The assumption hits Kia like a slap, but she keeps her expression neutral. Years of corporate boardrooms have taught her to control her reactions, to never let them see the anger building beneath the surface. "I own this house," she states clearly, each word measured and precise. Brad and Catherine exchange a look that speaks volumes, a mix of disbelief and something darker. They've lived in Westfield Heights for 5 years, know every neighbor, every story, every bank account balance. The idea that a black woman could afford a home here challenges their fundamental understanding of how the world works. "That's unlikely," Catherine says finally, her voice dripping with condescension. "We know everyone in this neighborhood. Perhaps you're confused about the address." From her garden next door, Mrs. Chen pauses in her morning routine, her weathered hands gripping her watering can as she watches the confrontation unfold. She's seen this kind of thing before, the way certain people in the neighborhood wield their status like weapons, making life difficult for anyone who doesn't fit their narrow definition of belonging. "I've lived here for 8 months, Kia replies, her patience wearing thin but her voice still steady. "And I have every right to use my own driveway however I see fit." Catherine's smile turns predatory. "Well, perhaps there's been some kind of misunderstanding, but this type of activity, it affects the aesthetic of the neighborhood. Property values, you understand." The words are carefully chosen, wrapped in the language of civic responsibility, but their true meaning is crystal clear to everyone present. "Aesthetic?" Kaya repeats, disbelief coloring her voice for the first time. "I'm maintaining my own bicycle, not operating a junkyard." Catherine pulls out her phone with theatrical precision, her manicured fingers dancing across the screen. "I think the HOA needs to know about this situation. They take these matters very seriously." A flash of memory strikes Kia like lightning. She's 12 years old again, standing in her father's garage in Detroit as he teaches her the mysteries of bicycle repair. "These hands can work miracles, baby girl," he'd told her, his own fingers black with honest grease from adjusting brakes and fixing chains. "Don't ever let anyone tell you different." Those words had carried her through engineering school, through the early days of building her company from nothing, through every boardroom where men in expensive suits assumed she was someone's assistant rather than the CEO. Mrs. Chen can no longer remain silent. The elderly woman sets down her watering can and approaches the group, her small frame radiating nervous determination. "Kia is good neighbor," she says, her accented English careful but firm. "She never make trouble." Catherine turns toward Mrs. Chen with the kind of smile reserved for small children and the intellectually challenged. "Mrs. Chen, you don't understand the complexity of the situation. We're protecting everyone's property values here." "But Kia do nothing wrong," Mrs. Chen protests, her voice growing smaller under Catherine's withering gaze. Brad steps forward, his lawyer instincts kicking into gear. "I think you should let us handle this, Mrs. Chen. This is a legal matter now." The elderly woman shrinks back, recognizing the threat in his words. She's lived long enough to know when powerful people are flexing their muscles, and she lacks the resources to fight them. Kia sees the fear in Mrs. Chen's eyes and feels something cold and hard settle in her chest. This isn't just about her anymore. It's about every person who's ever been made to feel like they don't belong, every individual who's been bullied by those with more power and privilege. "I see what this is really about," Kia says quietly, her voice carrying a new edge. Catherine's expression hardens. "This is about maintaining standards. This neighborhood has a reputation to uphold." "Standards," Kia repeats, tasting the bitter irony. "Or is it about who you think deserves to live here?" "Don't make this about race," Brad warns, his voice taking on the prosecutorial tone he uses in courtrooms. "This is purely about rules and regulations." Kia has heard these words before, in different contexts, but with the same underlying message. In boardrooms where her ideas were dismissed until a white colleague repeated them. In restaurants where she was seated by the kitchen despite her reservation. In countless interactions where people looked at her and saw not an individual, but a category, a stereotype, a problem to be managed. "Of course," she says, her tone deceptively mild. "Just like it was about rules when you assumed I was renting a room. Just like it's about standards when you question whether I actually own my home." Catherine's face flushes with indignation. "How dare you suggest—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Kia interrupts, her composure cracking just enough to show the steel beneath. "I'm stating facts." The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a knife. Mrs. Chen hovers at the edge of the confrontation, wanting to help but terrified of the consequences. Catherine and Brad stand united in their righteous indignation, convinced of their moral superiority even as they reveal the ugly prejudices that drive their actions. Kia picks up her bicycle wrench again, the tool feeling solid and reassuring in her hand. "I'm going to continue working on my bicycle. If you have legal concerns, you're welcome to pursue them through proper channels." Her dismissal stings like a physical blow. Catherine and Brad aren't accustomed to being ignored, especially not by someone they consider beneath their social station. You'll regret this attitude, Catherine hisses, her mask of civility finally slipping. This neighborhood has standards, and we enforce them. The next morning arrives gray and overcast, as if the sky itself is anticipating the storm to come. Kia is barely 3 hours into her bicycle restoration when Catherine returns, this time with reinforcements. 2 other HOA board members flank her like bodyguards, and a uniformed security guard brings up the rear, his hand resting casually on his radio. We've received multiple reports of illegal commercial activity, Catherine announces loudly, her voice carrying across the neighborhood like a town crier's bell. Several neighbors emerge from their homes, drawn by the commotion like moths to flame. Kia straightens slowly, her hand still holding the bicycle brake cable she's been adjusting. Commercial activity? I'm working on my own bicycle. Don't play innocent, Catherine snaps, her patience clearly exhausted. We have witnesses who saw you accepting payment from customers. This is a residential area, not a business district. The accusation hits Kia like a physical blow. She stares at Catherine in genuine shock, struggling to process the audacity of the lie. That's completely false. I haven't taken money from anyone. Brad emerges from behind his wife like a shark smelling blood in the water. I've consulted with the HOA's legal team. Operating an unlicensed business in a residential zone violates multiple city ordinances and HOA covenants. The security guard steps forward, his uniform lending official weight to the proceedings. Ma'am, I need to see your business license and tax documentation. I don't have any business documentation because I'm not running a business, Kia says, her voice rising despite her efforts to remain calm. This is harassment, pure and simple. Mrs. Chen vaguely appears at her garden gate, her face pale with worry. No, she calls out, her voice shaking with fear and indignation. Kia only fixes her own bike. I watch on her every day. Catherine whirls on the elderly woman with predatory focus. Mrs. Chen, are you certain you haven't been involved in this illegal operation, perhaps receiving services in exchange for keeping quiet? The accusation is so vile, so completely without foundation, that Mrs. Chen staggers backward as if she's been struck. I only say truth. Threatening witnesses now? Kaya steps protectively in front of Mrs. Chen, her composure finally cracking. You're despicable. Brad pulls out his phone with theatrical flourish. I'm calling the city tax office. They need to investigate unreported income from illegal business operations. And I'm contacting the police, Catherine adds, her voice dripping with false concern. Unlicensed commercial activity can result in significant fines and criminal charges. Kia feels the walls closing in around her, the weight of false accusations and manufactured evidence pressing down like a physical force. Around her, neighbors gather in small clusters, whispering among themselves, their faces a mixture of curiosity and judgment. This is insane, she says, her voice raw with frustration. You're making up stories because you can't stand the idea of me living here. Making up stories? Catherine gasps in mock outrage. We're upstanding members of this community. I'm the elected HOA president, and my husband is a respected attorney with 20 years of experience. What are you? The question hangs in the air like a challenge, heavy with implication. In their minds, the answer is obvious. She's nobody, a pretender, an interloper who has somehow gained access to their exclusive world through fraud or charity. The security guard clears his throat. Ma'am, until this is resolved, I'm going to have to ask you to cease all mechanical activities. On my own property? Kia's voice cracks with disbelief. The HOA has the authority to enforce community standards. Brad explains with the patient tone of someone addressing a child. Continued violation could result in legal action. Kia looks around at the faces surrounding her. Some curious, some judgmental, but none offering support. Even Mrs. Chen has retreated to her garden, too frightened to speak up further. The isolation is complete, the trap perfectly sprung. In the space of 24 hours, she's gone from respected neighbor to suspected criminal, all based on nothing more than prejudice and manufactured accusations. The harassment campaign that follows is methodical, relentless, and utterly devastating in its precision. Catherine and Brad transform into generals, commanding an army of paperwork, phone calls, and bureaucratic warfare designed to make Kia's life unbearable. By Tuesday morning, Kia receives the first official notice, a certified letter from the HOA demanding immediate cessation of all commercial mechanical activities on the premises. The language is dense with legal terminology, but the message is clear: submit or face the consequences. Catherine doesn't stop there. She creates a neighborhood group chat called Westfield Community Safety Alert and systematically invites every resident except Kia. The first message appears within hours of the chat's creation. "Fellow residents," Catherine types, her words carrying the authority of her position. "We must remain vigilant about activities that threaten our community standards. Certain individuals may be operating illegal businesses that could affect our property values and neighborhood safety." Mrs. Patterson from across the street responds immediately. "Are you talking about someone specific, Catherine?" "I prefer not to name names publicly," comes Catherine's careful reply. "But if you notice unusual commercial activity, people coming and going at odd hours, exchange of money, mechanical work beyond normal maintenance, please report it to the HOA board. The seed of suspicion, once planted, grows with frightening speed." Within 24 hours, Kia notices the change in her neighbor's behavior. Morning greetings become curt nods. Friendly waves transform into suspicious stares. The community that once felt like home now feels like enemy territory. Brad escalates the legal pressure with surgical precision. His first call goes to the city tax office, delivered in his most professional attorney voice. "This is Bradford Thornfield, counsel for Westfield Heights HOA. I need to report suspected tax evasion related to unreported business income at 1247 Maple Avenue." The tax inspector, who calls Kia, sounds bored but dutiful. "Ms. Williams, we've received reports of commercial activity at your residence. We'll need to schedule an audit of your business records." "I don't have business records because I'm not operating a business," Kia explains for what feels like the 100th time. "Then you won't mind if we verify that with a formal inspection," the inspector replies with bureaucratic indifference. The calls multiply like a virus. Building Permits wants to inspect for unauthorized construction. Environmental Services needs to investigate reports of improper disposal of bicycle lubricants and cleaning solvents. The Fire Department receives an anonymous tip about safety violations related to tool storage in residential areas. Each call requires Kia to take time from her actual job, the one that actually pays her bills and employs thousands of people, to deal with manufactured crises. Each interaction with a city official chips away at her reputation, creating a paper trail that suggests where there's smoke, there must be fire. Catherine's masterpiece comes in the form of an emergency neighborhood meeting held at her house on Thursday evening. She sends personal invitations to every resident except Kia, timing the gathering for when Kia's car is in the driveway, ensuring she knows about the exclusion. "Thank you all for coming," Catherine addresses the assembled crowd from her living room, her voice carrying the gravity of a wartime briefing. "We face a serious threat to our community's integrity." 15 neighbors sit in uncomfortable silence, sensing the weight of the moment but uncertain about the details. Brad stands beside his wife, his presence lending legal authority to her words. "As many of you know, illegal commercial activity has been documented in our neighborhood. The perpetrator has shown a complete disregard for community standards and legal requirements." Mr. Rodriguez from the end of the street shifts uncomfortably. "Are we talking about Kia? She seems like a nice person." "Nice people don't violate federal tax law," Catherine responds sharply. "Nice people don't operate illegal businesses that could result in city fines against our entire HOA." The room falls silent as the implications sink in. These are people with significant investments in their homes, people who've worked hard to achieve their place in this exclusive neighborhood. The suggestion that their property values could suffer sends a chill through the gathering. "What kind of fines are we talking about?" asks Mrs. Adams, her voice tight with concern. Brad steps forward, his lawyer's training evident in every gesture. Depending on the violations, we could face penalties ranging from $50,000 to $200,000. And that's just the beginning. If the city determines that our HOA failed in its oversight responsibilities, individual homeowners could face additional penalties. The numbers hit the room like a physical force. Gasps echo from multiple corners as people calculate what such fines could mean for their families. But that's not all, Catherine continues, pressing her advantage. Property values in neighborhoods with documented commercial violations typically drop between 20 and 30%. For homes in our price range, that represents hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost equity. Fear spreads through the room like wildfire. These aren't abstract numbers. They represent college funds, retirement plans, and generational wealth built over decades of hard work. "So what do we do?" Mr. Thompson asks, his voice strained with worry. Catherine produces a stack of papers with theatrical timing. "I've prepared a formal complaint to be filed with the city attorney's office. We need unanimous support from the community to demonstrate that we're serious about protecting our neighborhood." The signature gathering begins immediately. One by one, neighbors step forward to sign their names to a document demanding Kia's prosecution for illegal commercial activity, tax evasion, and violation of community standards. Mrs. Rodriguez hesitates, pen in hand. "This feels a bit extreme." "Extreme?" Brad's voice carries the weight of legal authority. "What's extreme is allowing criminal activity to continue unchecked in our neighborhood. We have a responsibility to protect our families and our investments." The pen moves across the paper, adding another name to the growing list of accusers. From her kitchen window, Kia watches the lights blazing in Catherine's house, knowing with sickening certainty what's happening inside. The isolation she felt before was nothing compared to this. The systematic turning of an entire community against her based on fabricated evidence and manufactured fear. Her phone rings again. This time it's a reporter from the local newspaper, having received an anonymous tip about potential criminal activity in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. "Ms. Williams, would you like to comment on the allegations against you?" Kia stares out at Catherine's house, at the shadows moving behind the windows, at the neighbors who've decided she's guilty without ever hearing her side of the story. "No comment," she says quietly. But inside, a different conversation is beginning, one that will change everything. Monday morning arrives with crystalline clarity, as if the universe itself is preparing for a moment of reckoning. Kia sits in her home office, surrounded by the trappings of a life Catherine and Brad never bothered to notice. Awards from technology conferences, photos with world leaders, and a wall displaying patents that have revolutionized entire industries. Her first call goes to Marcus Chen, her executive assistant, and no relation to her neighbor despite the shared surname. His voice carries the efficiency of someone accustomed to managing billion-dollar decisions before breakfast. "Kia, good morning. How can I help you?" "Marcus, I need a complete background investigation on Bradford Thornfield, attorney at Richmond and Associates, and Catherine Thornfield, currently serving as HOA president for Westfield Heights. I want everything. Financial records, professional history, any legal troubles, social media presence, the works." There's a pause on the line. Marcus has worked for Kaya for 8 years and knows better than to ask unnecessary questions when she uses that particular tone. "How deep are we going on this?" he asks instead. "Deep enough to understand exactly who I'm dealing with," Kia replies. "And Marcus, I need this by noon." "Consider it done." Her second call goes to David Park, managing partner at Richmond and Associates, and more importantly, one of Kia's golf partners from their monthly CEO networking group. "Kia!" David's voice booms with genuine warmth. "Haven't seen you since the charity auction. How's the tech world treating you?" "David, I need to ask you about one of your attorneys, Bradford Thornfield." The pause that follows speaks volumes. In the world of high-stakes law, reputation is everything, and David's hesitation suggests Bradford's reputation isn't what it should be. "Brad? He's a junior partner in our real estate division. Competent enough, I suppose. Why the interest?" Kia chooses her words carefully. "He's been making some rather bold claims about his legal expertise. I wanted to verify his credentials. Ah. David's tone shifts, taking on the careful neutrality of someone navigating dangerous waters. Well, Brad certainly has confidence. Perhaps more confidence than experience would warrant. I see. Any issues I should be aware of? Nothing official, you understand. But there have been some concerns about his judgment and his tendency to overreach his authority. Kia files this information away like ammunition for a future battle. Thank you, David. That's very helpful. Kia, if Brad is causing you problems, I should know about it. We can't have our associates creating issues for valued clients. I'll keep that in mind, Kia says, her voice giving nothing away. Her third call goes to Richard Blackstone, one of the most powerful real estate developers on the East Coast and a man whose influence extends into every corner of the city's political and business establishment. Richard, it's Kia Williams. Kia, sweetheart, how's my favorite tech mogul? Still changing the world one algorithm at a time? Richard, I need a favor. Do you know anything about Bradford Thornfield? The silence that follows is longer than David's, but when Richard speaks again, his voice carries a note of concern. Brad? Unfortunately, yes. His father was a friend of mine. Good man, died too young. I've been looking out for Brad ever since. Perhaps longer than I should have. What do you mean? The boy has issues. Arrogance, mainly. Thinks his family name entitles him to respect he hasn't earned. I had to intervene when the Bar Association was considering disciplinary action. Kia's pulse quickens. Disciplinary action for what? Misuse of client information for personal gain. Insider trading in real estate deals. Nothing that stuck, but the smell lingers, you know. And you helped him avoid consequences. Richard's sigh carries the weight of regret. His father saved my life in Vietnam. I owed the family a debt, but Kia, if Brad is bothering you, would you be willing to have a conversation with him about the importance of treating people with respect? Consider it done. In fact, why don't I arrange a meeting, today if possible? By noon, Marcus has delivered a comprehensive report that reads like a masterclass in financial desperation hidden behind a facade of success. Bradford and Catherine Thornfield are drowning in debt. Their mortgage payments are 3 months behind. Catherine's consulting business has lost 70% of its clients in the past year, and Bradford's partnership track at Richmond and Associates is in serious jeopardy due to his declining performance. Kia studies the documents with the analytical mind that built her company from a garage startup to a multi-billion-dollar empire. These aren't evil masterminds. They're scared, desperate people lashing out at someone they perceive as an easy target. At 2 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rings. Kia opens it to find Richard Blackstone standing beside a visibly uncomfortable Bradford Thornfield. Richard cuts an imposing figure even in his 70s, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with the kind of presence that comes from decades of commanding respect in boardrooms and political backrooms. Brad, Richard says with the tone of a disappointed father, I'd like you to meet Kia Williams. She's the founder and CEO of Technova Solutions. The name hits Bradford like a physical blow. Technova Solutions, the company whose IPO made headlines 2 years ago, whose innovations power half the smartphones in America, whose CEO was featured on the cover of Forbes as the visionary who changed everything. Bradford's face cycles through confusion, recognition, and dawning horror as the implications crash over him like a tsunami. This isn't just any successful black woman. This is one of the most powerful business leaders in the state. Someone whose company employs 12,000 people and whose personal net worth exceeds many small countries' GDP. Technova, Bradford whispers, his lawyer's mind finally connecting the dots. The company worth $2.8 billion at last valuation, Kia supplies helpfully. Give or take a few $100 million depending on market conditions. Richard shakes his head with visible disappointment. Brad, Kia tells me you've been having some disagreements about neighborhood standards. Care to explain your position? Bradford opens his mouth, but no words come. How do you explain to one of the most influential men in the city that you've spent 2 weeks harassing one of the most successful executives in the region because you thought she was operating an illegal bicycle repair business? We didn't know, Bradford stammers, his professional composure completely shattered. Know what? Kaya asks with deceptive mildness. That I was human, that I had rights, that I deserved basic respect regardless of my profession or bank account? The front door swings open again, and Catherine appears, drawn by the sound of voices. She freezes mid-step when she sees Richard Blackstone, recognizing him instantly from countless newspaper photos and society pages. Mr. Blackstone? Catherine's voice comes out as barely a whisper. Kia turns to her with a smile that could freeze fire. Catherine, I'd like you to meet my company. Actually, let me rephrase that. I'd like you to meet the consequences of your actions. The moment of recognition hits Catherine like a physical force, draining the color from her face as the full magnitude of her mistake becomes clear. She stands frozen in the doorway, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly as her mind struggles to process the impossible reality before her. Technova Solutions, Catherine repeats numbly, her voice barely audible. You're the woman from the Forbes cover, the same woman you've spent 2 weeks trying to destroy, Kia confirms, her tone conversational but her eyes like steel. The same woman you accused of running an illegal business. The same woman you convinced 18 neighbors to sign complaints against. Richard Blackstone shakes his head in disgust, his disappointment palpable. Brad, I've known your family for 30 years. Your father would be ashamed of what you've done here. Bradford's carefully constructed world crumbles with each passing second. His mind races through the implications. Kaya Williams isn't just wealthy. She's connected. Her company does business with half the major corporations in the region. Her influence extends into government, technology, and investment circles that could make or break careers with a single phone call. Kia, please. Bradford begins, his lawyer's training finally kicking in as he attempts damage control. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? Kaya's laugh carries no warmth. You called the tax office and reported me for income tax evasion. You contacted city planning about illegal business operations. You convinced your neighbors to sign a petition demanding my prosecution. Which part was the misunderstanding? Catherine tries to salvage the situation with the desperation of someone watching their life collapse in real time. Ms. Williams, surely we can discuss this like civilized people. Civilized? Kia's voice cuts through Catherine's plea like a blade. Was it civilized when you created a group chat to turn my neighbors against me? Was it civilized when you threatened Mrs. Chen for defending me? Was it civilized when you held a secret meeting to coordinate a harassment campaign? Richard's expression grows darker with each revelation. Brad, please tell me this isn't true. Bradford's silence is answer enough. He stands there like a man watching his career evaporate, knowing that Richard Blackstone's disapproval could end his legal career before lunch tomorrow. Kia reaches into her briefcase and withdraws a thick folder. I had my legal team research your activities. Would you like to know what they found? She opens the folder with deliberate precision, her movements measured and controlled. Bradford Thornfield, junior partner at Richmond & Associates, currently 3 months behind on mortgage payments totaling $2.3 million. Previous censure from the Bar Association for misuse of client information. Performance reviews describing him as arrogant, difficult to work with, and lacking in professional judgment. Bradford's face turns ashen as his private failures are laid bare in front of Richard Blackstone, the man whose opinion could make or break his future. And Catherine, Kia continues, turning to the other woman with predatory focus. Thornfield Image Consulting, down 70% in revenue over the past 18 months. Client complaints about unprofessional conduct and failure to deliver promised results. Currently being investigated by the Better Business Bureau for fraudulent billing practices. Catherine staggers backward as if physically struck. How did you... Those records are private. Nothing is private when you have the resources to look, Kia replies calmly. And I have significant resources. Richard's voice carries the finality of a judge passing sentence. Brad, I'm withdrawing my recommendation for your partnership track, effective immediately. Richard, please. Bradford begs, his professional facade completely shattered. My family depends on this job. Your family should have thought about that before you decided to wage war against one of the most influential executives in the region, Richard replies coldly. Kia, I offer my sincerest apologies for this man's behavior. If there's anything I can do to make amends. Kia considers this for a moment, then speaks with the calm authority of someone accustomed to making decisions that affect thousands of lives. There is, actually. I think the Richmond and Associates board should know about their associates' judgment in choosing targets for legal harassment. The implication hangs in the air like a sword over Bradford's head. David Park, managing partner of Richmond and Associates, plays golf with Kia monthly. A word from her could end Bradford's career permanently. And Catherine, Kia continues, turning her attention to the other woman. I think your remaining clients should know about your investigative techniques, particularly since many of them are my business partners. Catherine's knees buckle slightly as the full scope of her vulnerability becomes clear. Technova Solutions has contracts with 60% of the major companies in the metropolitan area. Kia's influence extends into circles that Catherine desperately needs to rebuild her failing business. Mrs. Chen appears at her garden gate, having watched the entire confrontation unfold. For the first time in weeks, she stands tall, her fear replaced by quiet satisfaction. Kia, she calls out, her voice stronger than it's been since this nightmare began. Sorry, I not brave enough before. I know you good person from beginning. Kia walks over to the elderly woman and takes her hands gently. Mrs. Chen, you were plenty brave. You stood up when it mattered most. Richard Blackstone adjusts his suit jacket with the finality of a man who's made his decision. Brad, Catherine, I suggest you both focus on making sincere apologies and figuring out how to rebuild your reputations. Because as of this moment, mine is no longer attached to yours. He turns to Kia with genuine respect. Kia, it's been a pleasure meeting you under these circumstances. Perhaps we can arrange a more pleasant encounter in the future. I'd love to discuss potential investment opportunities with Technova. As Richard's car disappears down the street, Bradford and Catherine stand alone on Kia's doorstep, their world permanently altered by the consequences of their own prejudice and arrogance. The neighborhood watches from behind curtains and partially opened doors, beginning to understand that they've witnessed something far more significant than a simple dispute over bicycle repairs. 3 months later, Westfield Heights has transformed into something unrecognizable from the community that once shunned Kia Williams. The morning sun streams through the windows of her converted garage, now a state-of-the-art workshop where she puts the finishing touches on her restored vintage bicycle. Mrs. Chen sits in a comfortable chair nearby, sipping tea from delicate china cups as she watches Kia work. The elderly woman's face radiates contentment, no longer shadowed by the fear that once kept her silent. Beautiful bicycle, Kia, Mrs. Chen says, admiring the gleaming chrome and perfect paint job. Your father would be proud. Kia runs her hand along the bicycle's smooth frame, feeling the satisfaction that comes from work completed with both skill and love. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. It feels good to finish what I started. The past months have brought remarkable changes to the neighborhood. Bradford and Catherine Thornfield departed within weeks of their confrontation with Kia, unable to face the daily reminder of their spectacular misjudgment. Catherine lost her remaining clients after word spread about her role in the harassment campaign, while Bradford found his partnership prospects at Richmond and Associates permanently derailed. Do you regret what happened to them? Mrs. Chen asks, her voice gentle but curious. Kia considers the question while wiping grease from her hands. I regret that it was necessary, but I don't regret the outcome. She settles into the chair beside Mrs. Chen, her expression thoughtful. You know what I learned from all this? Having power means nothing if you don't use it responsibly. Catherine and Bradford had power in this community. Social status, professional credentials, financial resources, but they used that power to hurt people they saw as beneath them. Mrs. Chen nods knowingly. Power without wisdom is a dangerous thing. Exactly. And when someone uses their position to cause harm, there have to be consequences. Not for revenge, but to prevent them from hurting others. Kia gestures toward the construction site visible through the garage door, where workers are putting the finishing touches on a new community center. That's why I donated $5 million to build that facility. It will provide job training, educational programs, and workshops for young people who want to learn bicycle repair, programming, or start their own businesses. The community center represents more than just philanthropy. It's a statement about what real leadership looks like, about using success to lift others rather than exclude them. And the Housing Discrimination Fund? Mrs. Chen asks. Already helping 12 families fight unfair treatment from landlords and HOAs. Kia replies with satisfaction. Sometimes people need resources to stand up against those who abuse their authority. The sound of children's laughter drifts through the open garage door, where neighborhood kids play in the street without fear or tension. The Hernandez family that moved into Bradford and Catherine's former house has brought new energy to the community, their 2 young children quickly becoming favorites among the neighbors. Mrs. Chen, can I ask you something? Kia says. What hurt most about what Catherine and Bradford did? The elderly woman considers this carefully. Not the insults or threats. Was the assumption that I didn't matter, that my voice didn't count because I was old and scared? Kia nods. For me, it wasn't even the attack itself. It was the realization that they looked at me and saw not a human being with rights and dignity, but a problem to be eliminated. They never once considered that I might belong here, might have earned my place through hard work and achievement. She stands and walks to the bicycle again, her hand resting on the handlebars her father taught her to grip decades ago. But you know what the real tragedy is. They could have simply walked over and introduced themselves. They could have asked about the bicycle, maybe learned something interesting about their new neighbor. Instead, they chose to see an enemy where they could have found a friend. Mrs. Chen smiles sadly. Fear makes people do stupid things. Fear and prejudice, Kia agrees. But this experience taught me something important about leadership. When you have influence, you have a responsibility to protect those who can't protect themselves, not to attack them. The workshop falls quiet except for the distant sounds of children playing and construction workers building something positive from the ashes of conflict. Kia looks around at her tools, her bicycle, and her friend, feeling a deep sense of peace that comes from turning a negative experience into positive change. The funny thing is, Kia says with a genuine smile, this neighborhood is now more diverse, more welcoming, and more connected than it's ever been. People actually talk to each other now, help each other out. Catherine and Bradford thought they were protecting their community, but they were actually destroying it. Mrs. Chen raises her teacup in a mock toast. To new beginnings. Kia raises her coffee mug to meet it. To justice served with wisdom. Kia turns toward the camera with a confident smile, her posture relaxed but commanding as she leans against her perfectly restored bicycle. The morning light catches the chrome details and highlights the satisfaction of work completed with both skill and purpose. So there you have it, friends. Sometimes the people who judge you based on appearances get the biggest surprise of their lives. She runs her hand along the bicycle's smooth frame, the gesture casual but symbolic of everything she's accomplished through patience and determination. The most important lesson? Never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong somewhere just because of how you look or where you came from. Your worth isn't determined by other people's prejudices. Kia pauses, letting the weight of her words settle in the morning air. And if you're facing discrimination or unfair treatment, don't suffer in silence. Document everything, seek support from people who believe in justice, and remember that truth has a way of coming out eventually. She gestures toward the community center rising in the background, its walls representing hope and opportunity for future generations. Most importantly, use your success to lift others up, not tear them down. That's the real measure of power, not what you can destroy, but what you can build. Kia winks at the camera with knowing satisfaction. And who knows? The next time someone tries to mess with you, they might discover that you have a few surprises of your own. She faces the camera directly, her expression mixing warmth with unmistakable strength. Drop a comment below and tell me about a time when someone underestimated you because of your appearance. How did you handle the situation? And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about justice served and tables turned. Kia spins the bicycle wheel, the spokes catching the light as they rotate with perfect mechanical precision that speaks to hours of dedicated work and inherited wisdom. Sometimes the best revenge is simply proving them spectacularly wrong. The wheel's gentle whirring punctuates her final words as Kia's confident laughter mingles with the sound of success, hard-earned and righteously claimed.